Shabbat Shalom, everyone, on this Shabbat Chukat. On this Parsha, on this episode of As the Torah Turns, as my friend and colleague David Ingberg calls it, it begins with a description of a most mysterious ritual, the red heifer, a mother cow that has never been yoked, a cow without blemish, and a red one at that. In earlier years, perhaps. It also includes the laws of impurity around coming into contact with a dead body. It includes the deaths of Miriam and Aaron. The Torah teaches that Miriam died in Kadesh and was buried there. And in Kadesh, there was no water for the community, and the people assembled against Moshe and Aharon. This leads to a most important scene in Torah, which I'm going to share by chanting some of it for you this morning. But before we get there, there's a line from a different verse of a different kind of Torah, the Torah of Pete Seeger. Well, if you want to have great love, you have to have great anger. Well, if you want to have great love, you have to have great anger. When I see innocent folks shot down, you just want me to shake my head and frown. Oh, Pacem interes mirshanti salam hewam. Oh, Pacem interes mirshanti salam hewam. I had difficulty with these words for many, many years. In order to have great love, you have to have great anger. How do these two things come together? Certainly, Moshe had great love for the people. Maybe it was that great love that led to his impatience with him, as we shall see in a moment. But Rabbi Shai Held shares this with us in his new book, Judaism is About Love, when he says, counterintuitive as it may seem, anger in the face of injustice can actually be a manifestation of deep love. Anger in the face of injustice can actually be a manifestation of deep love. And I think that that's exactly what Pete Seeger is singing about. So let's make our way to the Torah portion. V'lo haya mayim li'eda vayikalo al Moshe v'al Aharon. The community was without water, which comes to reason. Miriam dies, and Miriam, she was the one who, with her divining rod perhaps, was able to find water in the desert. And now there is no water. The people quarreled, Vayerev, with Moshe, saying, V'lu gavanu bigva achinu lifnei Adonai. If only we had perished when our brothers perished at the instance of Yud He Vav He. Imagine that. If only we had died before, that we wouldn't have to live through this. Wow. They've been pushed to the edge of their savlanut, of their patience. V'lama haviatem et kahal Adonai el hamidbar hazeh. Why have you brought Yud He Vav He's congregation into this wilderness? Lamut sham, for us and our beasts to die there. It is a valid question that they're asking Moshe. But can you imagine having led the people this far? You as the leader, what would your reaction be? Let's see what Moshe's reaction. Responding to, why did you make us leave Egypt? To bring us into this wretched place, a place with no grain or figs or vines or pomegranates. There's not even water to drink. The grass is always greener. Memory sometimes deceives us. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. And Yud-Heh-Vav said to Moshe, Kach et hamateh, v'hakahel et ha'eda ata v'Aharon achicha. V'dibartam el hasela. Take your stick, your rod, and talk to the rock in their eyes, in front of them, li'einehem v'natan meimav. And out of the rock will come mayim, water. You and your brother take the rod and assemble the community. And thus you shall produce water for them, for the rock, and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. And that's what Moshe does. Except he yells at them. He's at his wit's end. Listen, Shim'u na hamorim. Listen, you rebels. Shall we get water for you out of this rock? Whew. And Moshe raised his hand and struck the rock twice. Vayach et hasela v'matehu pa'amayim. V'yetzu mayim rabim. And out came copious water, and the community and the beasts drank. Now, Yud-Heh-Vav said to Moshe and Aaron, because you didn't trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them. To me, that seems a little bit unfair. Just for this, Moshe is not allowed to fulfill his dream? Perhaps this is teaching us of what anger can lead to, and that there oftentimes is a price to pay for our anger. Here's a fun story. You know that Rabbi Hillel was known for his great patience. And one day, Hillel was washing his entire body in his house when there was a knock on the door. A voice called out, "Is Hillel here? Is Hillel here?" Well, Hillel quickly dried himself and put on his clothes, and he went to the door and he said, "My son, what do you seek?" "I have a question to ask." "Ask, my son." Well, with this, I need to remind you that, again, Hillel was known to be a man of tremendous patience. And this man that came to his door, he'd made a bet with his friend that whoever could get Hillel's anger aroused, that person would be rewarded with a number of zuzim. He would win the bet. Oh, so apparently that's what's going on here. "Ask, my son," Hillel replies. "Why are the heads of the Babylonians round?" "Oh, my son, you ask a good question. The reason is they have no skilled midwives." Oh, well, the man thanks him and he leaves. Hillel returns to his bathing, removes all his clothes, and continues where he had left off. And again, you can guess it. A knock on the door. The same man. "Is Hillel here? Is Hillel here?" "My son, what do you seek?" "Oh, yeah, of course." He dried himself and got dressed. "I have another question. Ask, my son, why are the eyes of the Palmarians bleared?" "Oh, my son, you ask a good question. The reason is that they live in sandy places." The man turns and he walks out the door. Hillel, of course, returns to his bathing, removes all of his clothes, and is trying to wash himself when, of course, As in all good Jewish stories, there's a third knock on the door. Is Hillel here? Is Hillel here? Hillel dries himself and dresses himself very quickly and answers the door. My son, what do you seek? I have another question. Well, ask my son, why are the feet of Africans wide? Well, you ask a good question, my son. The reason is that they live in watery marshes. The man takes a deep breath and continues, saying, I have many questions to ask, but I am worried that you might become angry. Ask all the questions you have to ask. So the man says, are you the Hillel who is called the Nasi, the leader, the prince of Israel? Hillel replies, yes. In that case, may there not be many like you in Israel. Why so, my son? This surprises Hillel. Of course, I've just lost 400 zoos because of you. A fun story to illustrate the length that savlanut, that patience, can go to. So I share both anger and patience with you as a coming attraction to what we're going to be doing in the month of Elul, which is spending 4 weeks in Musar, in refining our midot of savlanut and other midot. First of all, patience, savlanut, endurance, holding space. It literally means to bear a burden. A sovel is like a burden, to hold somebody's burden. In order to do that, you have to have orach hapayim, tolerance, forbearance. Orach hapayim literally means a long face. Picture a horse. Nirgaz, someone who is easily provoked, upset, volatile. Kaas, anger, annoyance, irritation. Moshe is pushed to his limit. Shimuna Hamorim, listen you rebels. And then it gets pushed to hit the rock. That's my dad on the left, my mom and my dad. And I do not remember my father ever expressing anger. And in hindsight, I don't think that was a good thing. Certainly my father got angry. We all do. But to never express anger in our presence, I think I lost out because of that. Because this is one of the midot that I struggle with in my life. So Musar. It's a Jewish spiritual practice that gives concrete instructions on how to live a meaningful and ethical life. Raise your hand if you have ever engaged in the process of Musar. A number of us here. So I'm going to be calling on you all to be leading some of these sessions. If you are up to it, let me know. Musar is a virtue-based ethics based on the idea that by cultivating inner virtues, we improve ourselves. There are a number of different ways to practice Musar. Here's one of them. In the morning, focus on one selected soul trait, a midah. Sometimes chant it, sometimes recite it in such a way as to enliven and energize the soul. In other words, to awaken us to that characteristics that lives in us, sometimes dormant, sometimes right on the surface. Number 2, in the evening, keep a journal. This is a very important part of Musar practice. Looking back over the day, noticing where the soul trait showed up. Number 3, between morning and evening, give yourself an exercise, a practice to engage with the midah so that the goal is transformation, to move closer to the ideal of who you can be, closer to your own soul's unique purpose in this lifetime. And so the idea is to do things that confront us really with that particular characteristic that day, so we cannot look away. If you want to have great love, you have to have great anger. They live side by side. Christian ethicist Timothy Jackson teaches that love is not always nice or civil. In a world as broken as ours, anger is sometimes the most loving response. And so, on this Shabbos day, May your anger rise out of respect for one another, balanced with love, laughter, and small acts of kindness. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.